Hey everyone, welcome to Be Our Guest, our weekly virtual happy hour with industry professionals. I'm Janki, Artistic Director of Live and in Color. We are an artist-serving organization dedicated to developing new stage works that promote and celebrate diversity. Like many others during the pandemic, Live and in Color is facing the challenges of keeping our company running. If you're able, it would mean so much if you made a donation today to support Live and in Color and our artists. Just go to liveandincolor.org to donate. Also, Live and in Color is currently accepting musical submissions for playwrights, composers, and lyricists of color and other underrepresented communities interested in developing their new musical. Submissions are due March 31st, so make sure to check that out. Now, grab your cocktail and start leaving questions for our wonderful guests in the comments. Please help me welcome an incredible educator and an esteemed assistant dean of the Yale School of Drama, assistant professor, adjunct of theater management, and general manager of Yale Rep. Please welcome the amazing Kelvin Dinkins Jr. Hello, sir. Cheers.
Yeah, thank you so much. Cheers. Good to see you all.
Thank you for joining me. How are you? Where are you tuning in from?
East Haven, Connecticut.
All right. Have you been spending most of this year there?
Absolutely.
Is that originally home for you?
No, I was born in Far Rockaway in Queens, New York, and raised in Atlanta, Georgia.
Awesome. Well, just to jump in, you have done so many different jobs within the industry. What originally drew you to theater at a young age or in your life?
Yeah, so I went to a school in North Georgia Mountains, and it was a college prep, boarding school, and they had a, sort of state-of-the-art theater and an amazing program. And, I watched, sort of at the end of my 8th grade year, a production of MAME. And because we were such a small school, we had from grade 6 to 12, about 300 students, right? Because it was such a small school and such a big musical, everyone was in it practically. And I was in the audience and I was like, I can do that. I was like, that looks fun and I feel like I should do it. And so I took drama class the following year as a freshman. And my director kind of one day was like, hey, I want you to read parts with me. And I didn't know what that meant, right? So I joined him in his office and he kept reading lines and telling me, sort of directing me around him. And he's like, all right, you're in the spring show. And so that was my intro to acting. And so I got to star in the spring play, which is called The Boys Next Door, at the Reardon Theater in Georgia. And there was no turning back after that.
Wow. I love that MAME was your gateway drug to this.
Yeah.
So great.
Yes.
And so, how did, from being an actor, how did your path lead you into general management?
I feel like it's like having a bossy demeanor for some reason, I feel like I gravitated towards leadership roles in high school and, was, class president and did, different things with like Beta Club and Honor Society. I was a prefect. So, I really did enjoy leadership and practicing it. But, when I got to undergrad, I was part of a college touring troupe called the Princeton Triangle Club. And, I was an actor on stage. And one of the first things I did for them, I wanted to be the assistant tour manager because we do a national tour every year. And for some reason that interested me, right? It was, got to do a little bit more than just being an actor. And I had been on tour as a freshman. I was like, this looks interesting. And that year, for whatever reason, the president was like, I need you to be the tour manager, not the assistant. And so, halfway into my freshman year, I was coordinating a national tour with over 60 undergraduates across the country. In the Northeast, actually, is where we toured that year. And it was like a, sort of 7-day adventure. And so I got a real taste of admin and theater management. And that role actually led me to becoming the club's first Black president the following year. So it was 116 years old at that time. And you were essentially an executive producer of the main stage show, which actually goes up at McCarter Theater. And if you've been down there, that's the Triangle Club actually built that theater. Wow. And so it was, one of those things where, you got to perform, at night, and then the next day you're part of running the club, managing the show, working with a board of trustees. And one of the other undergraduate experiences I had was Princeton Summer Theater. And essentially the students run a summer theater. And while McCarter is dark for the summer, those patrons who are in town come to this small theater on Princeton's campus, and we produce a 4-play season over 10 weeks. So it's intense summer stock, and I was the business manager for that. And so I actually enjoyed it, and I didn't need to be on stage. I didn't need to be directing or acting. It was just something enjoying, about doing the business of getting people paid, managing front of house, doing a payroll and a budget. And I always knew I was going to go into business, but I had figured iBanking, not theater management.
Well, you obviously found your calling very early because you're very good at it. But prior to working at Yale, you were the general manager of 2 River Theater in New Jersey. What was the biggest challenge of running a theater day to day? And that question probably has changed a lot now.
Actually, it hasn't. It's one and the same. I think my answer is always the same. I view general management as being a fixer, right? And the biggest challenge is the day to day and navigating different crises, big and small, and being able to react and to lead and to step in. And I feel like that's a lot of my job. While I was a general manager, I negotiated all of our union contracts. So from the designers to the actors to the directors and choreographers, musicians. And with all of those amazing artists come their agents and negotiations and contract deals and terms. And when you have that many sort of balls in the air that you are managing or plates that you're juggling, anything can come down. Any negotiation can fall apart. And that was the excitement of doing what I do, is being there at the nexus of all challenges and navigating those with the leadership team and the producing team. But I just had a real penchant for figuring things out, right? There was no manual. No one tells you how to be a general manager when you start becoming a general manager. You just do it. You show up. And things that don't go to other departments typically go to you because that is your title, right? You're kind of a catch-all. So the challenges for me were just being at the ready at Two River and managing different productions. And when I was there, we really started producing musicals. And so that was kind of new territory for us. And so, I helped navigate and manage that process as well.
I mean, you've sort of explained it, but we were having the discussion before, just, in terms of theater management, there are so many variations of titles: general manager, executive director, there's often a lot of crossover, but, in terms of your definition of what a general manager does, can you, just for a lot of our audience that's not theater folk, it would be just to hear that.
It actually varies from theater to theater.
Yeah.
And arts institution to arts institution, right? And in theater, a general manager typically supports administrative functions and operations when it comes to contracts, when it comes to budgets. Some, like myself, actually supervise facility operations. So everything to do with the building and the management thereof, so I supervise in that role. I also supervise our associate managing directors of special projects and associate managing director of Yale School of Drama. And so you are mentoring them through the work of budgeting, of contracting, of running logistics, of being present at production and running certain things by management, executive leadership, right? So there's typically an executive or managing director that a general manager actually works with pretty regularly. So in all of my roles, I pretty much support on the executive side of leadership and so help support the artistic and production departments in terms of managing budgets, negotiating deals. And I have seen in, different theaters, some general managers actually manage HR functions as well. And some, and some are actually doing the role of, when there is no managing director, they are fulfilling that executive role. So they have a little bit more broader responsibilities in terms of how they oversee the administrative operations of a theater.
Well, I mean, it's a huge job and such a, integral part to creating a show or a theater company. I know we at Live and in Color rely heavily on our general manager, Ernie Fimbres, and it's so great to have someone like you and Ernie running the show.
Yeah, and another thing, I don't want to make sure I don't leave it out, you're a liaison to the unions as well.
Yeah.
So, SDC, USA, and Actors Equity, you are that go-to person whenever there's a problem, usually, right? Or whenever there's a detail that needs to get ironed out, you are the representative of the producing entity. And that is that occupied a lot of my time. In terms of just negotiating contracts and again, fixing a lot of things.
Yeah. So how has managing a theater prepared you for becoming a teacher?
I mean, what's great is this was the last place I thought I'd be, was at the head of a classroom, because, I went through undergrad and was like, I'll never go to school again. And then 2008 happened. And then I was like, oh, maybe I should go to grad school. And, I finished grad school and I was like, I never want to go back to theater, to a school again. And then this opportunity showed up in which, you could teach. And, I remember my first day, I was like, what am I going to teach? What can I share with students who are trying to become, future leaders and doing, some becoming general managers, marketing directors, managing directors? Like, what am I going to share with them? And, what's beautiful about the Yale School of Drama is that we are all practitioners, right? We are all working professionals while we're teaching. So I'm teaching my experience, right? My lived experience, having worked with 2 other regional theaters and an off-Broadway producing company before. And I'm sharing that with the students. And I teach a class called Management Seminar. And I just launched a class this semester called Managing Crisis and Recovery. Which is, timely and necessary. Yeah. But, I really can't say. I mean, it is thinking on your feet. It is being flexible, being open to the ideas of others. And that is what we do in the classroom. Our students lead in the classroom. It is not a lot of, sort of a grand, professor at the front lecturing, right? We're teaching through experiences, through case studies, through real life examples. And that's what's exciting, right? Is to get questions and engage with your students. And because just as much as, they're learning from me, I'm learning from them, because we have a diversity of experience in the room. And it is bringing the collective to a central issue at hand, or a central management function that we all have different thoughts about. So your experience actually prepares you to teach based on what you know. And a lot of the scenarios that I encountered over the past, the 7 to 10 years of my career have been valuable to share with folks who haven't had those experiences yet, or may not have.
So for you, can you explain what the biggest differences between managing a commercial production, a not-for-profit production, or a university production are? And are there differences?
Budget.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Budget and profits. For universities and other nonprofit theaters, there really isn't, much, focus on profit, right? It is hopefully you're breaking even at the end of any season or production. And, for a commercial production, you are hoping to at least make your money back. And that almost never happens, right? And you almost never are profitable with a commercial production, but you are standing behind an artistic product and a creative team and a single work, whereas we and nonprofit theaters and university theaters are about a programming series, right? We are typically year-round, with summers off, of course, but some theaters do run throughout the year or have a 9-month season. And it is about providing a diversity of programming options to a community. A lot of our regional theaters, are centered in mission-driven organizations that are serving community. And for us, as both a school and a repertory theater, we get to do both and combine those layers of having a nonprofit theater embedded in a conservatory training program. And I'd say the differences are, for our schools is, those aren't professional contracts. Our students are working free of charge. They are getting a learning experience out of the collaborations that they're doing. And, while they are at Yale Rep, they are getting exposure to professionals and working with professionals, right? So we bring in professional guest directors and professional actors and sometimes designers. And we support productions using the student body who build the sets, who are dramaturging, who are stage managing. So there's a lot of overlap, but I'd say the biggest distinction between those three entities, it's really about money in terms of what you're using that artistic product for. Is it a learning experience? Is it to be part of the greater good of being a 501c3 organization, being mission-led, community-driven? And I think commercial productions are made and created to appeal to as many people as possible. And the kind of numbers they're putting up, both money-wise and people-wise, is different and probably far outpaces anything that we do at our university and nonprofit theaters.
Wow. We're seeing in our industry a need to diversify not only what happens on stage, but also who works behind the scenes. How do you think we can create more access to BIPOC artists who might be interested in a career in stage management, theater management, not stage management?
Well, we could eradicate racism for starters. If we're talking about creating avenues for access, and in order to do that, you have to acknowledge that it in fact exists and has for many years, or since we started professionalizing the world of theater and creating theater management and theater managers. Recognize that access to those experiences has been reserved for a select few, and typically individuals who don't look like me and typically are not BIPOC folks, while there have been leaders who have been leading theaters of color for many years at legacy institutions, but those are not as plentiful and not as well resourced, and certainly have not been as well funded as historically white institutions. So when we think about creating access for Black, Indigenous, and people of color, we have to look at what the hurdles have been to keeping us from this pathway. I really didn't discover I wanted to be a theater manager until even after I graduated college, right? I just outlined for all of you, what drew me to theater and theater management, but I didn't know I could be a theater producer. I didn't know that I could be a theater manager. I didn't even know the job existed. And there I was performing in McCarter Theater many nights out of the year, staying there for many late texts, but no one had connected the dots. And I have to think sometimes why that was.
Yeah.
Right. You had someone who had the skill set, who had the experience, who had the tenacity to be a theater manager. And no one turned to me and said, hey, this is a job you should think about. Yeah. I had to figure it out for myself. And had I seen more people who looked like me out in the industry, more producers on Broadway, more who were leading, right, who were out front, like we heard of the Harold Princes, we heard of, all the folks who were making Lion King, and I didn't see BIPOC folks out front, right? Certainly they could have been on stage, but they were not leading. And if I had just had the one person to say, hey, this might be great for you, or you could think about it. So I dedicate a lot of my career to thinking about how we create managers, how do we inspire future arts leaders? Because in high school, the focus is being on stage, being an active part. You typically are serving a program director's vision, right? They are typically directing, and you may not have many other opportunities outside of stage management and being on stage. Yeah. So learning that this world even existed was a barrier for me. It took me some time to figure out. So I think we have to create more access by focusing on having more visible BIPOC leaders in the industry, but also getting the pipeline prepared to start thinking about this as a viable career path.
Yeah, so great. With your students, what tools do you teach them in order to survive such a competitive industry? Because it really is, and I think based on what we're going through now, I think it's going to be even tougher moving forward for a while. Mm-hmm. What are some of the key things you advise them.
Yeah, it is to be tenacious while you can be, right? You have to build your network now, like while you are in an academic training institution, because one of the beautiful things about our industry that I actually can't find fault with is anyone I've asked to speak with or get coffee with has said yes. Right? Like, I mean, big wig producers and directors and someone, as you find your way to them, they have always said yes. And I think that's one of the beautiful things or pieces of encouragement I got. I remember when I was working for the Weislers as an intern in their international touring office after college, briefly. One of the accountants there was like, "Oh, do you know Jordan Roth?" And he had just been promoted to president of Duke Hampson. I was like, "No, I don't know." He's like, "You should meet him." And I said, "How?" And she sort of said, "You should just email him." And I did, and I got to meet him and hear about his life and career. And that's how I started to put pieces together about what kind of career did I want. And I'm pushing my students to actually start thinking and articulating what is ideal for you. And if it doesn't exist right now, what do you need to do to get there? Right? Because that's one of the conversations I get to have as they are graduating and thinking about entering the industry is, I want to put as many resources in front of them as possible. I want to make sure that they have access to search firms, right? That has been, one of the greatest mysteries of my career is understanding what a search firm and search consultant does, because you don't get to find out until they call you. Mm-hmm. Right? Until you're in that process, there is a theater that needs leadership and they are considering you. And so I push my students to start thinking about that now and broadening their networks while they're learning so that when they graduate, they take all of the skills, all of the experiences, and they walk into a job confidently, knowing that they, have built their networks and have a well sort of stocked resource of people that they can turn to when job opportunities are being created, because I think that is the best way to advocate for yourself.
That's so wonderful. I think your students are very lucky to have you as their teacher. Our mission at Live and in Color is to connect diverse communities to create new stage works. We always ask this question to our guests, but what does having an inclusive working environment mean to you?
That there's psychological safety and trust.
Mm-hmm.
That is one of the things that I've stumbled on in the past couple of years and have led workshops around is trust and psychological safety being crucial to any team environment, right? We can't create theater with just one person. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, why are we all here? We all need one another and each other's skill sets. So why don't we actually better and improve our means of accessing trust and psychological safety again, which is essentially thinking about, do you feel free to risk in front of your team and not fear ridicule? And that is unfortunately a part of a lot of theater and management cultures in our industry is, being berated by leadership, people abusing power and not listening to those who are most marginalized in an institution. And if we don't focus on trust and psychological safety, I don't know why we're here. Yeah. So when I think about an inclusive working environment, it's where everyone from intern on up to the board of directors, right, feels comfortable sharing issues, conflict, right, and resolving things and having resolutions together and creating an atmosphere where folks not only feel welcome, but they feel included to make change. And that is one of the things that I've been fighting for and advocating for in leadership, but also as a BIPOC member of the theater industry, is that if we truly want inclusion, we have to show it, we have to model it and demonstrate it, because there are opportunities for us to bypass a lot of the fear and a little bit of the mythology about sort of one grand person having all the wisdom to know how to do this thing. We are in a space where we need to be innovating more, and that's not just going to be the people at the top responsible for it. So when I think about an inclusive working environment, I want one where a new person can show up and start leading with ideas and start asking questions. Difficult conversations can be had, And that doesn't happen everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Even with people who've worked together for decades, there are things that they haven't said to each other because there's fear. There's a lack of trust and a lack of psychological safety in the organizational culture. And I want to spend more time paying attention to that.
So great. I think we have a few questions from our viewers. Let's see what we got.
Okay.
Lizzie says, what are you most looking forward to when theaters reopen?
Yeah, it depends on which stage of reopening, right? If it's reopening and we're all in masks, you know, I think just hearing that crowd applause for the first time, you know, will be probably the thing that lifts my heart the most. You know, it's one of the things I enjoyed about being a performer. You know, is it was great learning all the lines, understanding Shakespeare and all that, but the applause at the end, the standing ovations, that's one of the most like fulfilling parts of being a performer and watching that in the room. But you know, when we're post mask and we're back to, you know, sitting, you know, crammed together like, you know, sardines and sneezing on each other and unwrapping candies together, I look forward to the parties, right? The opening night parties, getting back that, because everyone's going to have that moment post COVID where it is a celebration of coming out of social distancing, you know, where we have found an effective vaccine that is reliable. And I believe celebrating with live entertainment is going to restore our spirits.
Yeah, that's great. Let's take another.
Yeah.
Lori says, what show did you work on that changed you as a person, other than Maine?
Well, I didn't work on that show, but yeah, that was one of the reasons. Show that changed me as a person. Oh, that is I think that's a tall order for a show to change you fundamentally as a person. I'll have to think on that. I can say that one of the shows that actually helped me see myself more was Passing Strange on Broadway. And that was written by Stu, and it was the closest thing to my life story I'd ever seen on a Broadway stage. And watching it go from the public, because I watched it 5 times at the public and then probably a couple of more on Broadway, and while it was recorded live, that story touched me and helped me finally see myself and feel that I need to create art like this, that makes you feel, that has a story that sounds amazing, that uses music and a narrative in an incredibly artful way, and kind of transports you from the theater into your own head, into your own lived experience. So that's the production that I think just really opened me up to what this art form can do.
So true. It's such a, I think that show affected me as well so much. It was so brilliant. I think I saw it about 4 times as well.
Oh yeah.
Let's get Nature Boy Mike says, do you have any role models or mentors?
Yeah, probably not role models, but mentors certainly all around me. And I think one of the beautiful things that I realized is, you know, I had this picture in my head about what mentorship looked like. It was that this one seasoned, you know, much older professional is sort of taking you by the hand and guiding you every step of your life. And that hasn't been my experience. My mentors come in the form of people I work with, who I work with, you know, sort of across department, across experience, and my peers. That, you know, we can have peer mentors as well, has sort of been the inspiring thing, that people my own age or younger can be mentors to me, because they are invested in your success. They advocate for you when you're not in the room, right? They are looking out for you and your future opportunities. And I have broadened, you know, what mentorship is to me by acknowledging that anyone who has those sort of those objectives in mind with respect to me, who I am, my career, and my professional development, that I trust, right, and that I can confide in, can be a mentor to me. So I do have many around me and in my own personal circles, and probably too many to name on this call. But there have been people who are at different junctures of my career have been absolutely integral to my growth, to my success. I have a, you know, my boss who just recently retired, Victoria Dolan, was certainly a mentor to me over the past 4 years of my time. Was the deputy dean and managing director, and she was someone I felt that I could learn with and not just from. And that is one of the most inspiring things about having a true mentor, is that someone who is invested in you speaking up and sharing your knowledge as well.
That's so great. I think we have time for one more quick one.
Okay.
Lizzie is back. What is the biggest lesson you have learned from your students?
That we can do better. And when you have a student body of over 200 reminding you of that as an institution or as part of leadership, that we can do more. We can push more, we can lead better, we can be more inclusive, we can advocate for more equity, diversity, inclusion, and anti-racism. Mm-hmm. Our students are teaching us that, and particularly for me, is how to get out of my rigid way of thinking, right? Because I still am holding on to some things that I had to learn as a young Black man coming through this industry, thinking that these were the ways to advance, thinking that this was the best way to move forward. And my students remind me that I have to unlearn some of that and create new and to innovate for them, right? Yeah. So that they can have a better experience, so that they can learn newer and better practices for themselves. And that has been the consistent reminder, because, you know, no matter how long I stay here, our students will be around the same generational age, right? And so, you know, as we move on, we are continuously learning from a younger generation, or, you know, your own peers, about how to move us forward and about how to better educate and to, again, be more inclusive. And I think my students help push me and hold me accountable in that way, and I truly appreciate them for it.
That's wonderful. So we're out of time. It goes by so fast. Before we go, please consider supporting our organization by going to liveandincolor.org to donate. All money raised goes towards our amazing artists and developing their new work. Also, be sure to tune in to Be Our Guest next week, when we talk with the amazing writers of Live and in Color's musical and development within Elsewhere, Trent Jeffers and Josh Benton-Court. They're an incredible team that I'm very excited for you to meet. Thank you to everyone who tuned in today. And thank you, Kelvin, for joining me. Kelvin, will you send a little toast before we say goodbye?
All right. Well, here's to all of us, and here's to going back better. Cheers.
Going back better. Thank you. See you all next week. Cheers.
Good night.
Change on the horizon, coming soon.